Wow, no wonder I had an oil leak. Look at that seal. That's not how that's supposed to look. That's completely deformed. Hi, my name's Andy, and in this video we're going to replace the rear main seal on my 1966 Mustang. This car came with the factory 289, and in this motor it's a two-piece rear seal, which makes it really great for somebody like myself that doesn't want to take out the transmission to replace the rear main seal. We can do it by just dropping the oil pan, pulling off that rear main cap, and pulling the seal out. And I'll show you how we do that. First thing you're going to want to do is pull off the oil pan. I've already done another video where I did the oil pan gasket, if you want to check that out, and it shows you how to take the oil pan off. But it's basically do that subframe bar that goes across underneath the motor, take the starter out, take those 7/16 bolts that go around the edge of the oil pan, and then there's two 1/2-inch bolts on each end. Pull those out, and then if you want to make it easy for yourself, if you pull that idle arm off of the idle shaft, and you can pull that steering mechanism just out of the way a little bit, it helps get that pan out of the way. It makes it a lot easier to get to those parts. And then if you have the time, maybe let the car sit overnight with that pan off, and it gets all the drips off of the bottom of that block so that they're not dripping on you when you're trying to work on that main seal. Let me show you what it looks like underneath the car. So here's what it looks like underneath my 289, and you can see that the steering, this is still in the way, but you see you can move it, and it does make it easier to get that pan out of the way. We can go ahead and leave the oil sump in place, and really we can leave everything in place. We're just gonna remove these two bolts back here to pull this main cap off of the back, and that's where the rear main seal is sitting in. These are 3/4 inch bolts, and we only need to remove these two on the end, so we'll break those free and then we can pull this off. If you had the one-piece rear main seal, it came in later Ford, I think 302s and stuff like that, you would have to move the transmission to get to it, but we're fortunate here we don't have to worry about that. So let's get this main cap off. Also notice that, see these little drips that are starting to form right here on the end of the piston there? That's the stuff that just drips on you all night. In fact, as I was waiting, doing this, I just got another drip. So I let it sit overnight, and hopefully most of that should be off there, but I'm gonna come through real quick with a rag and just kind of wipe everything off before I start working on that cap. All right, so here's the rear main cap, and inside here is the seal for, so we've got a couple of things that I've noticed right off the bat. First, this seal is facing the wrong way. See that little lip right there? That actually needs to be on the crankshaft side, not the transmission side. It's facing the wrong direction. So that was probably one of the reasons why I was having a leak, is because the seal's facing the wrong way. Also, I've seen a couple different people do it this way, where see how it's flat? The seal is sitting in this trough flat. Actually, one side should be sticking up, about 3/8 of an inch, and then the seal on the block should be the opposite, where it's sticking up 3/8 of an inch, so that this would actually be kind of clocked this way a little bit, kind of going that way, or it doesn't matter, but it needs to be sticking out one side, and there'd be a hole, I guess, where the other half of the seal would sit inside this cap. So I see we got two problems here. One, the seal's facing the wrong way, and we really should have that seal clocked in a better position. Let's go ahead and get this thing cleaned up, and we'll pull this seal out of here, and then I'll show you how to pull the seal out of the block. And there's all kinds of stuff going on with it. I mean, see this right here, this isn't supposed to be on there. So that's not helping us out. And then on top of that, see how this is flat right here? Like it's almost crushed? That's not right. That's not supposed to be like that. Let me get this out of here and I'll show you what it looks like up close. So by tapping this down with just a punch, it'll rotate this seal. It'll kind of rotate it out like that, and then we can grab a hold of it and pull it out. You see how deformed this is? That's not supposed to be like that. So we had a couple problems here. One, this is how the seal was sitting this direction. It needs to actually be sitting this direction. This flange needs to be on the bearing side, you know, where the rest of the crank is. Let's go ahead and get this cleaned up, and then let's go take a look at the block side of the seal, and we'll show you how to get that out of the block. The next step is to get this old seal out. And if they had installed it correctly, where a part of it was sticking out about 3/8 of an inch, you might be able to grab that with some pliers and just kind of pull it out and rotate it around the crankshaft, and it should come out. But in this case, it's flat on both sides, so I'm gonna have to use a punch, and hopefully just hitting it will drive it out, and then we'll go from there. There we go. It just broke free, and now it's sticking out a little bit over here, so we're just gonna go ahead and just kind of continue to tap it through. Be careful you don't wanna score the block with the edge of the punch, so make sure you're centered on that piece of metal easily, and then just kind of drive it through. Just kind of tap it, and it should just work itself out. And it's starting to come out over here, so now we can almost grab it with some pliers and pull it out. Let's just see if we can get a little bit more. All right, that's probably pretty good. Now you can probably still see it starting to come out over here. Let's grab it with some pliers and pull it out the rest of the way. When you try to grab it and rotate it around the crankshaft. Instead of pulling straight down, try to pull it so it follows the crankshaft. Okay, and we're taking it down just like it was sitting. And in this case, here, the flange that I was talking about on the other one is on the back side, and it actually needs to be facing towards the crankshaft, towards the front of the motor. So this half of the seal was also put in backwards. It should have been put in this way, but it wasn't. So we'll make sure to put that in correctly when we put the new seal in. So here's that seal. Again, it was in backwards. This one looks fine. But I think when I was in between these, I was looking at this, and you see this hole inside here. In the bottom of this trough, there is a pin that keeps this thing from rotating like this when the crankshaft spins. And I think the pin was sticking out too far. I went ahead and used a punch and kind of drove it down a little bit so it's much shorter. And I think what happened is, you can see how that's straight up flattened out. I mean, I think that pin was pushing this gasket, this seal up and deforming it, and that's what caused that problem. There's a metal bar inside this seal, and I think they had kinked this bar because that pin was too long. So the new seal, when we put it in there, hopefully this pin is now short enough that it won't cause that same problem. Let's look at the new pieces. All right, we're going to use a Felpro two-piece gasket, two-piece seal. And the part number is this BS30136. That's the one I'm using. And it comes with the two halves that we need, and that's all that we need to worry about. So with the new one, when we put it in here, we're going to want this lip on the bearing side. This is where the crankshaft goes this way. The transmission's on this end. So we want the seal this way. When I pulled this off, the seal was that way, and that was incorrect. So we're going to go ahead and put it in this way, and then we're going to put it so it's about 3/8 of an inch or so sticking out of this cap. And this one, you just want to kind of just place it in there and just kind of push it in place. There, now you can see that this thing is seated all the way, and that little piece is sticking out about 3/8 of an inch. And the other seal, when we put it in the block, we're going to have it sticking out of the block clocked this way. Actually, it'll sit that way. And so that when we put this cap up inside there, this will fit down inside of this main cap. The instructions say to put just a dab of sealant right here on the ends of these bearing halves, or these seal halves. Also, we might want to put just a small bead along the edge of this cap here, just to kind of seal it up. Also, put oil or assembly lube on this surface here, and then before you install this new seal, we want to get this thing lubed up with some oil or assembly lube too, and also help it rotate inside and around the crankshaft. You also want to just real quickly clean out any RTV that you have in here. Just a flathead screwdriver. Just careful, don't score the block. Just press lightly and you can get the edge of that RTV stuff out of there and get it cleaned up. Get a good clean surface. Now before we put this seal in, I'm just going to take some oil off the block here and just kind of wipe the edge of the seal and just kind of lubricate a little bit just to get it so that it'll slide in easier. It doesn't take much. Okay, it's important again to stress the direction of the seal. This little lip is on the crankshaft side. We want to make sure that that's pointing the right direction. Then when we put in there, we just put it in and kind of push it around and rotate it around the crankshaft. And remember where you had the bearing cap, where the piece was sticking out just a little bit, the way it's sitting in this block, when I put this in here, this actually has to be sticking down just a little bit on this side because the main cap has the piece sticking up on that side. So we're gonna go ahead and put it in. You should be able to get most of it in with your fingers. I'm getting to the point where it's a little harder, and you can use a punch to just kind of tap it in place. Be very gentle with this, and we're just gonna just lightly just tap it. And that's going to continue to drive it around the crankshaft into position. There we go. Okay, so again, we have about 3/8 of an inch sticking out here. We got about 3/8 of an inch up inside there. That's where the piece on the bearing cap is going to fit inside. Now we can go ahead and put the bearing cap in place. So like I mentioned before, you want to put just a little bit of RTV on the tip of each side of this gasket of the seal, and then we just put a small little bit on the edge of this cap, and that will help seal this trough inside here. Also, when you're in here, you want to dry this out and get it as clean as you can before you put this back in. And this is one last chance to make sure that you got the seal facing the right direction, and then we go ahead and put the cap up in place. So we're just going to go ahead and just tighten this down just to get the cap in place before we start doing the torque procedure for it. Okay, now those are nice and snug. Now we can go ahead, we want to do 10 to 12 pounds of torque on these bolts first, and then come back and we want to do between 60 and 70 pounds of torque on these. So we'll split the difference and do 65 pounds on those. Okay, that's 12 pounds. Now we'll go up to 40 pounds and then work our way up to 65 pounds. Okay, that's 40 pounds. All right, that's 60 pounds, or 65 pounds. All right, we are back in business. Okay, that wraps up the two-piece rear main seal on a Ford 289. You guys saw how easy it is. I think you guys can do it with just a couple of tools. You can get it done yourself. Again, make sure you got that seal facing the right direction and clean the surface as well before you put it back together, and you should be good to go. When you put that back together, don't forget to put in a new oil pan gasket and then put the oil pan back in and the oil, and then go for a drive and have fun. All right guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. Also, if you subscribe to my channel, that also helps me out, and I do appreciate that as well. Thanks for sticking with me. We'll see you in the next one.